How do planes fly? The average passenger plane weighs around 380 tons, and airplanes effortlessly fly over us every single day. But do you ever stop and wonder how those big hunks of steel are able to take flight? Well, in this video, I'm going to be explaining and showing you guys how airplanes are able to lift off the ground and fly. To start things off, I'm going to be talking about the history of airplanes and how airplanes were invented. On December 17, 1903, the Wright brothers invented the first successful plane. It weighed around 750 pounds and was made out of spruce wood, and it had a 12 horsepower engine. The engine powered the aerodynamic propeller that powered the plane, and the Wright Flyer flew for 59 seconds and went 852 feet. And since then, technology has improved drastically. And that brings us to our next topic. Technology has improved immensely since then. Airplanes today are made out of aluminum, steel, and titanium instead of wood. And instead of a single 12 horsepower engine, planes such as the Boeing 747 have 4 engines that have over 100,000 horsepower each. Planes used to use propeller engines, but planes today use jet engines, which are a lot more powerful than propeller engines. The Wright Flyer flew for 59 seconds and traveled 852 feet, and the average passenger plane today can fly for 16 hours non-stop and can travel around 15,000 kilometers. And airplanes today can also go much higher at around 30,000 feet in the air. So how do planes actually lift off the ground and fly? The wings and the engines are the two main components that let the plane fly. The engine creates thrust to move the plane forward, and the wings create lift. The front of an airplane's wing is always tilted upwards. And since the wing is tilted, once the plane is traveling at a fast enough speed, the air pressure underneath the wing will be higher than the air pressure above the wing. The reason that the bottom of the wing has higher air pressure is because most of the air is crashing against the bottom, since it is tilted upwards, exposing the bottom more. Less air is hitting the top of the wing, so the air pressure is lower, and it makes a downward force that creates lift. In order to get enough air to create lift, you need thrust. The engines of the plane create thrust. Thrust is what pushes the plane forward. A jet engine burns fuel with air, which makes a chemical reaction called combustion to release the energy called thrust. Here is how a jet engine works in steps. Air goes in through the front of the engine. Then the air is compressed by the compressor blades and fans. The air is then led into a combustion chamber where the compressed air and a mixture of fuel is ignited. The mixture of air and fuel burn really hot, and that creates an immense amount of pressure. All that energy is then passed through the turbine blades at the back of the engine and out. These engines create massive amounts of thrust. The engines of the Boeing 747, which is a standard passenger plane, can create up to 63,000 pounds of thrust each. That's over 126,000 pounds of thrust altogether. The Boeing 747 does weigh around 400,000 pounds, so that amount of thrust is needed. Also, the 747 can fly up to 1,100 kilometers per hour. How do planes change direction? Planes have 3 components that allow them to change directions. There are 2 flaps located on each wing, and they are called ailerons. The ailerons allow the plane to tilt either left or right, and the ailerons can also make the plane do a roll. The next component is called the rudder, and it is located at the back of the plane on the tail. It allows the plane to swerve left or right. And finally, the last component is the elevators, which are also located at the back of the plane on the horizontal stabilizers. It lets the plane go up or down. How are people able to breathe in a plane at such high altitudes? When planes are flying at high altitudes, the air pressure is too low for our lungs to get oxygen. Airplanes have a system that takes in air from outside of the plane, and it pumps air into the cabin at a pressure that our lungs are able to handle. Planes are also really expensive. A standard passenger plane such as the Boeing 787 costs around $360 million. A single landing gear costs around $9 million, and each plane has 4 landing gears. In addition to that, each engine on the Boeing 787 costs around $40 million, and the engines are made by Rolls-Royce. So in conclusion, planes are able to fly mainly because of the wings and the engines. The engines make thrusts that push the plane forward, and the wings create lift with the air crashing against it. Altogether, they allow planes to fly. It is amazing that something that heavy is able to lift off the ground and fly at incredible speeds and at high altitudes. If it weren't for the Wright brothers, we may not even have planes that are as advanced as the ones we have today. And that concludes my video on how planes fly.